My husband signed the divorce papers with an arrogant smile. He thought I'd become a poor divorcee. But the next second, his smile vanished when the judge banged the gavel and said, "Before the story begins, please write in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so the Midnight Stories channel can continue to grow and bring you even more compelling stories." The atmosphere inside the family courtroom felt cold and oppressive. It was as if the air conditioning had been deliberately set to its lowest temperature, freezing any remaining trace of emotion that might still linger. But for Ethan, the chill felt refreshing. He sat upright, leaning confidently against the solid oak bench, a sense of victory swelling inside his chest. In front of him lay a single white document, the divorce settlement, waiting for his signature. One signature that would unlock his freedom, a ticket to a new life filled with excitement alongside Lily, a woman he believed was far more sophisticated and understanding than the woman seated quietly beside him. Ethan glanced sideways. There sat Sarah, his wife, soon to be his ex-wife, calmly lowering her gaze. She wore modest clothing and a neatly draped shawl without a single flashy accessory. To Ethan, she looked painfully dull, just like their marriage over the past 5 years. In his eyes, Sarah was nothing more than a housewife, someone who knew only the kitchen, the bedroom, and household chores. She never complained, never demanded anything, and to Ethan, she seemed completely lacking in ambition. He smirked inwardly. He assumed Sarah was holding back tears, devastated at the thought of losing such an exceptional husband. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed the pen handed to him by the court clerk and scribbled his signature swiftly and confidently. The sound of pen scratching paper echoed loudly in the silent courtroom. He tossed the pen aside and exhaled deeply, as if a massive burden had just been lifted from his shoulders. Turning towards Sarah, he wore the most arrogant smile he could muster. In his mind, he was already preparing a farewell that would crush her spirit, making sure she understood that without him, she was nothing. He imagined her begging, crying, maybe even collapsing at his feet. The judge adjusted his glasses and studied the files before him. Silence fell before his deep voice broke through the tension. He began reading the final verdict, including the division of marital assets, the moment Ethan had been waiting for. Ethan was confident. He believed he deserved the larger share of the house they lived in. After all, he was the one who worked, while Sarah stayed home. He also assumed Sarah's savings were insignificant, probably just leftover grocery money. The judge cleared his throat before reading the financial summary. Based on a forensic financial audit submitted by Sarah's attorney, Ethan was found to carry substantial liabilities, maxed out credit cards, overdue payments on a luxury car, and multiple bank loans taken to support a lavish lifestyle. After deducting all debts, Ethan's net assets amounted to only $320. Ethan jolted in his seat. $320? The number rang in his ears like a cruel joke. Before he could protest, the judge continued, this time addressing Sarah's assets. His tone subtly shifted, laced with unmistakable admiration. The judge read aloud a list that left the courtroom breathless. Majority shares in 3 rapidly growing tech startups, overseas fixed-term deposits, industrial land holdings, and premium real estate properties including apartments and commercial buildings in the city center. All assets were registered under Sarah's personal name and classified as premarital wealth and independent investments, completely untouched by Ethan's income. The judge paused, then announced the final figure in a voice that echoed through the courtroom. Sarah's total net worth, $780,000. Silence. Time seemed to freeze. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Moments earlier flushed with arrogance, he now looked pale as a corpse. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. He turned stiffly towards Sarah. She remained calm, composed, utterly unsurprised. She had always known. With trembling hands and a cracking voice, Ethan finally snapped. He jumped to his feet, shouting accusations at the judge. He demanded a recount, claimed manipulation, screamed that the numbers were impossible. His dignity crumbled in real time. Sarah slowly stood up. She adjusted her clothes with a grace Ethan had never noticed before. Locking eyes with Ethan, she offered no anger, only a cold, piercing calm. A faint smile curved her lips. In a soft but firm voice, Sarah said, "Accept it. Consider the $320 severance pay for your time accompanying me all these years." Then she turned and walked out. Outside the courthouse, Ethan chased after her and grabbed her arm. He demanded answers, accused her of stealing, of doing something illegal. Before he could say more, a sleek black luxury car stopped at the entrance. A uniformed driver stepped out, opened the rear door, and bowed politely. "Good afternoon, Madam CEO. The board of directors is waiting." Ethan froze. CEO. He watched as Sarah stepped into the car. The window rolled up, sealing her off from his world forever. Left standing on the curb, Ethan trembled under the midday sun, realizing too late that he had traded a diamond for gravel, and that realization shattered him completely. Lily had already been picturing a luxurious vacation in Paris, something Ethan had promised her for months. She had even made a shopping list of designer handbags and luxury shoes she planned to buy there. Ethan swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He walked toward Lily and sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped. He tried to smile, but it looked painfully forced. In a low voice, he said that the asset division process had turned out to be far more complicated than he expected. Lily stopped folding her clothes. The smile on her face slowly faded, replaced by a suspicious glare. She demanded honesty and pressed him for the exact amount. Ethan lowered his head, avoiding her sharp gaze, and muttered softly, $320. Silence swallowed the apartment bedroom for a few seconds. Then Lily exploded. She screamed hysterically, throwing the clothes she was holding straight into Ethan's face. She shouted in disbelief, calling him stupid and incompetent. How could a 5-year marriage produce only $300? She kicked the suitcase until it toppled over. Her dreams of Paris, luxury bags, and an effortless life shattered instantly. Lily hurled insults at Ethan, calling him a useless man who was good for nothing but empty promises. Her beautiful face twisted into something frightening, consumed by rage and greed. Ethan tried to calm her down, reaching for her shoulders, but Lily slapped his hands away violently. Desperate to defend himself, Ethan claimed that Sarah must have cheated. He told her about the courtroom, about the judge announcing Sarah's wealth of $780,000. The moment Lily heard the number, her eyes widened. Her anger shifted direction. Now she demanded that Ethan take the money back. She poisoned his mind, insisting the money must be stolen, laundered, or siphoned little by little from Ethan during their marriage. She urged him not to stay silent and to act immediately. Fueled by Lily's words and his own curiosity, Ethan decided to investigate. He remembered the company name printed on the folder carried by Sarah's lawyer. He convinced himself that Sarah was probably just a low-level employee who had falsified documents, or worse, the secret mistress of the company's boss. With trembling hands, Ethan pulled out his phone and searched for the headquarters number online. Once he found it, he hit call, his heart pounding. He planned to report Sarah to Human Resources for fraud or embezzlement. The operator answered. In an arrogant tone, Ethan demanded to be connected to HR. When the call went through, he spoke loudly, announcing himself as Sarah's husband and demanding confirmation of her employment status. He hinted that his wife might be involved in suspicious financial activities. He expected shock, gratitude, immediate action. Instead, the HR staff member sounded confused, then suddenly extremely polite when Ethan mentioned Sarah's full name. Carefully, the staff member asked, "Sir, do you truly not know who Sarah is?" Ethan snapped, yelling for them to stop wasting time. Finally, with a trembling voice, the HR representative revealed the truth. The company Ethan had called had been acquired last week by a multinational holding corporation. The owner of that holding company, now the sole owner of this firm, was Sarah. Her name was officially listed in the notarized documents as the sole shareholder and chief executive officer of the entire corporate group. Ethan's phone slipped from his hand and crashed onto the floor. His knees gave out. He collapsed onto the apartment floor, his face drained of all color. Lily rushed over, shaking him, demanding to know what had happened. Ethan stared at her blankly. His lips moved without sound before he finally whispered, "Sarah isn't an employee. She owns everything. She's the boss, the real one." The truth slammed into them like a tidal wave, wiping out every fantasy of an easy life they had built together. Ethan realized too late. He had been sleeping beside a dragon, and now it had awakened, ready to burn his arrogance to ashes. Regret crept in, but fear of a bleak future consumed him far more. That morning, the sun blazed brightly, but to Ethan, the world felt pitch black. After learning the shocking truth about Sarah's status as the owner of the corporate giant that had just acquired his company, Ethan hurried toward the office with chaotic thoughts. Part of him still denied reality, hoping for an administrative error, or believing he could manipulate the situation like he always had. He convinced himself that if he met Sarah in person, he could persuade her. Surely she still had feelings. Surely his charm could soften her, or at least guilt her into sparing his job. Straightening his crooked tie, he forced what little dignity he had left and entered the luxurious office building downtown. Something felt off. As soon as he stepped through the glass doors, he noticed strange looks from employees. The receptionist, once flirtatious and friendly, avoided his eyes, pretending to type. Staff members whispered in corridors, casting mocking glances. He ignored them and headed straight for the elevator, pressing the button for the top executive floor. The elevator doors opened on plush carpeting that muffled his footsteps. He rushed toward the large double doors marked CEO office. The executive secretary tried to stop him, saying the CEO was unavailable. Ethan, blinded by emotion, shoved the doors open. He stormed inside, then froze. Behind a massive mahogany desk sat Sarah. Gone was the tired housewife. She wore an elegant business suit, radiating authority that crushed him instantly. Beside her stood Daniel, a well-known corporate legal consultant, feared by unethical businessmen. Sarah looked at Ethan calmly, without surprise, as if she had been expecting him. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Sarah raised her hand slightly, signaling him to be silent. She nodded to Daniel. Daniel stepped forward, opened a thick red folder, and spoke in a firm, professional tone. He explained the findings of an internal audit conducted after the acquisition. Ethan's face drained as Daniel detailed 2 years of financial fraud, falsified expense reports, fake business trips, misuse of company credit cards for personal luxury. Daniel listed transactions, designer handbags, 5-star hotel stays in Bali, expensive restaurants, all charged under Lily's name, all paid with company funds. Ethan's legs nearly buckled. Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm but lethal. She said she hadn't fired Ethan because of personal reasons or their divorce. She fired him because he was a thief, an incompetent, corrupt employee.
She tossed the termination letter at his feet. Sarah added that the company would pursue legal action unless Ethan repaid over $50,000 within 24 hours, an impossible sum for a man who now had only $300. Ethan dropped to his knees, begging for mercy, rambling about mistakes and their marriage. Daniel blocked him immediately and called security. 2 guards entered. Sarah turned away, returning to her paperwork, as if Ethan no longer existed. He was dragged out, screaming her name, past coworkers who stared with contempt. Thrown out of the building where he once felt like a king, now reduced to something unwanted.
The sky that afternoon turned a heavy shade of dark gray, as if mourning or perhaps mocking the miserable fate that had befallen Ethan. Strong winds swept through the streets, carrying the unmistakable scent of an approaching storm. After being forcibly expelled from the office building, Ethan returned to the apartment utterly shattered. His mind was blank. He had no idea where he could possibly find tens of thousands of dollars within a single day. The only place he could think of was the apartment, hoping he could at least rest for a moment and calm Lily down. But as soon as he reached the apartment lobby, he sensed something was wrong. His heart nearly stopped when he saw Lily screaming hysterically at the reception desk, surrounded by several building security guards. Ethan ran toward her. The moment Lily saw him, she rushed over and weakly pounded her fists against his chest. She cried uncontrollably, wailing that they could no longer enter their unit. Their access cards no longer worked, and security had forbidden them from going upstairs. Confused and panicked, Ethan demanded an explanation from the head of security, who stood there with an expressionless face. Coldly, the man explained that the apartment unit Ethan had been living in was a corporate housing asset reserved for managerial-level employees. Since Ethan had officially been terminated that afternoon and blacklisted by the company, the housing benefit had been revoked. Furthermore, the building management had already received a formal eviction order from the asset owner, a company owned by Sarah. Ethan stood frozen in disbelief. Sarah had left him absolutely no room to breathe. The head of security then pointed toward the side entrance of the lobby. There, stacked carelessly, were suitcases and cardboard boxes containing Ethan and Lily's personal belongings, already removed by the building management. They were not allowed back inside. They had been expelled like pests. Lily screamed even louder when she saw her cosmetics and clothes piled messily inside reused instant noodle boxes. She cursed Ethan relentlessly, blaming him for every disaster that had ruined her life. People passing through the luxurious lobby stared at them with disgust and discomfort, turning them into free entertainment. Lily grabbed Ethan by the shirt until one of his buttons popped off. She demanded that he take her to a luxury hotel immediately. But Ethan could only stand there, frozen. His credit cards were blocked, his car had been repossessed, and the cash in his wallet wasn't even enough to cover the deposit for the 5-star hotel Lily demanded. In the end, with what little dignity he had left, Ethan dragged their suitcases out of the cool, elegant lobby onto the scorching, dusty sidewalk. Lily continued complaining non-stop. Her high heels stumbled awkwardly as she struggled with the heavy luggage. The moment they reached the roadside, a torrential downpour came crashing down without warning. No drizzle, just instant, merciless rain soaking them within seconds. Lily's expensive clothes were drenched. Her makeup melted away, leaving her face smeared like a crying clown. Ethan tried to hail a taxi, but none would stop after seeing their chaotic condition and piles of luggage. His ride-hailing app was useless. His balance was insufficient. They were trapped on the sidewalk, soaked, freezing, and homeless.
They eventually huddled beneath the narrow awning of a closed electronics store. The shelter was barely enough. Rainwater still splashed onto their feet. Ethan sat beside the suitcases, hugging his knees, his teeth chattering from the cold. Lily clutched her handbag tightly beside him, still cursing their fate. At that lowest point, Ethan's eyes drifted toward a massive LED screen mounted on the building across the street. The screen glowed brightly through the curtain of rain, broadcasting a live, exclusive business talk show. The face that appeared on the screen made Ethan's breath catch. It was Sarah, his ex-wife, looked radiant, dressed in an elegant outfit with a modern, perfectly arranged shawl. She sat confidently across from a famous host. A bold headline appeared beneath her image. Most Influential Woman of the Year, the success story of the CEO of Savina Group. Ethan watched as Sarah smiled warmly at the camera, the same smile that once belonged to him, a smile he had wasted. The audio from the screen was faint beneath the rain, but clear enough. The host asked what Sarah's greatest motivation behind the massive corporate restructuring and her firm leadership decisions. The camera zoomed in on Sarah's face. She paused briefly, her gaze seeming to pierce through the screen, straight towards Ethan, trembling on the sidewalk. Calm and authoritative, she replied that her greatest motivation was cleansing her work environment of unproductive elements. With a meaningful smile, she said that the key to success was having the courage to throw trash where it belongs so that better things can enter. The word trash struck Ethan's chest harder than the judge's hammer ever did. He knew exactly who she was referring to. Ethan lowered his head. Tears mixed with rain streamed down his face. Beside him, Lily stared at the screen with her mouth hanging open. Envy and hatred burned inside her as she watched the woman she once belittled, now standing at the very top, while she herself ended up soaked on the street like a sewer rat. A luxury car sped past, splashing filthy water onto Ethan and Lily, completing their suffering that day. No one cared. In this cruel city, those who follow are trampled, and Ethan had just felt the first stump of the karma he had planted himself. Their lives collapsed like a free fall from a cliff into a dark abyss. After that miserable night sheltering in front of closed shops, they finally found a temporary place to stay, not a luxury hotel or a glamorous apartment they once flaunted on social media, but a cramped boarding room in a damp, dead-end alley. The walls were stained and peeling. The only ventilation was a dusty, slatted window facing a brick wall. The stench of sewage from the open drain outside seeped in constantly, making their stomachs churn. Inside the 10 by 10-foot room, resentment grew rapidly. Lily never stopped complaining about the heat, the thin foam mattress, and the terrible fate she suffered for choosing Ethan. She felt deceived. She had abandoned comfort and reputation for a man she thought would make her a queen, only to end up sharing a filthy bathroom with strangers. She looked at Ethan with pure disgust, as though he were a contagious disease that had destroyed her future. Her beauty, once adored by Ethan, was now buried beneath a permanent scowl and deep creases of anger. Ethan, meanwhile, fought desperately to recover. Every morning he wore his last remaining wrinkled suit and walked from building to building under the scorching sun to submit job applications, saving transportation money. With his experience as a senior marketing manager, he believed he would soon land a new job. He contacted former colleagues and business connections, hoping for opportunities, or at least a loan. Reality, however, slapped him hard. Each time he submitted his resume, the response was the same. At first, they welcomed him, until his name was entered into the HR database or his background was checked. Faces changed instantly. Some closed their folders and asked him to leave.
Others looked at him with contempt. Others openly said his name was already on the industry blacklist. News of his embezzlement at Savina Group had spread quickly among professionals. His reputation was destroyed. No sane company would hire a manager proven to have stolen corporate funds, especially from a conglomerate so powerful and respected. The breaking point came on the 5th day. Ethan returned to the boarding room drenched in sweat, his feet blistered. He carried a cheap boxed meal to share with Lily, hoping just a little that she might greet him with a glass of water or a trace of sympathy. Instead, when he opened the creaky door, he was met with an eerie silence. No loud videos from Lily's phone. His eyes immediately locked on the plastic wardrobe, its doors wide open. Empty. His heart pounded violently. The large suitcase was gone. The designer bags, mostly fake but precious to Lily, had vanished. Panicking, Ethan reached for the pocket of his work pants hanging behind the door, where he had hidden an envelope containing the remaining $260 from the divorce settlement. Gone. He tore apart the pillows, mattress, and even under the bed. Nothing. That money, their last lifeline, was gone. On the small, dusty table lay a torn piece of notebook paper. With trembling hands, Ethan picked it up. Lily's neat handwriting stared back at him, cruel and final. She wrote that she could no longer endure suffering with Ethan. She took the remaining money as compensation. Lily also wrote that she had blocked Ethan's number and ordered him never to look for her again because she was leaving, far away. Maybe to find another rich man, one who was actually rich, not a fake rich fraud like Ethan. Ethan crushed the note in his fist until it disintegrated. He screamed at the top of his lungs inside that suffocating, windowless room, unleashing every ounce of frustration, rage, and heartbreak pangled inside his chest. He had lost everything. A loyal wife, a prestigious career, a luxurious home, and now even the mistress he once bragged about had abandoned him at his lowest point. Weeks passed after Lily's disappearance, and Ethan finally hit rock bottom. He was evicted from the tiny boarding room because he couldn't afford the rent. Now, Ethan wandered the unforgiving streets of the capital city as a homeless man. His appearance was no longer recognizable. The white dress shirt he once wore proudly to work had turned a dull brown, stained with sweat, grime, and road dust. His once well-groomed face was now covered in uneven stubble, and his eyes, once arrogant, were hollow, empty, carrying the unmistakable look of despair. Ethan slept in front of closed storefronts, competing for space with stray cats. He survived on leftover food scraps or the rare mercy of passers-by. His stomach twisted violently. Hunger was no longer just an urge, it was real physical pain stabbing deep into his gut. He hadn't eaten proper food in 2 days. Pride and dignity had long been pawned off for a single bite of food, but today, even that was denied. He tried begging at a traffic light, only to be chased away by local thugs who controlled the area. Too weak to resist, half delirious from hunger, Ethan stumbled away. His thoughts drifted back to the past. He remembered Sarah's cooking. He remembered how he used to mock her chicken soup, complaining it was too bland, too salty, or served too hot. That soup had been made with love. Now the image of a warm bowl of soup felt like a piece of heaven forever out of reach. Regret began haunting him every second. He finally realized his downfall wasn't caused by bad luck, but by his own stupidity. He had held a diamond in his hands and thrown it away to grasp shards of glass that only cut and wounded him. Driven by unbearable hunger and the last traces of irrational hope, Ethan made a desperate decision. He would go to Sarah's old house, the inherited home from her parents, the one Ethan used to insult relentlessly, calling it ugly and outdated, pressuring her to sell it.
Maybe Sarah still lived there. Maybe if he begged, she would pity him. She used to be gentle, right? Ethan believed he could manipulate that softness once more, at least to get food and a place to sleep. Dragging his feet, Ethan walked for miles toward the elite residential area where the house was located. When he arrived, he froze. The house he remembered was gone. No more rusted iron fence, no more peeling walls. The property had been transformed into a luxurious modern tropical mansion, grand yet elegant. The yard was spacious and lush, filled with expensive ornamental plants arranged with precision. As dusk fell, garden lights illuminated the property, casting a warm, refined glow. From behind the tall, solid gate, soft classical music played, mixed with the sound of laughter. There was a garden party underway. Ethan peeked through the gate. Luxury cars were lined up neatly in the driveway. Guests dressed in elegant attire strolled around holding glasses of wine. And in the center of it all, Sarah. She looked radiant. She wore a simple yet obviously expensive evening dress paired with a perfectly matching shawl. Her face was peaceful, genuinely happy, laughing lightly at a joke from her companion. The contrast was brutal. Sarah inside the gate, glowing. Ethan outside, looking like a beggar. Hunger and desperation pushed Ethan past reason. When the gate opened briefly to let a guest's car in, Ethan slipped through, ignoring the shouts of the security guard. He staggered toward the party. The moment his filthy, foul-smelling presence entered the garden, laughter stopped. Music seemed to die instantly. All eyes turned toward him, shocked, disgusted. Some women covered their noses. Men instinctively stepped back, shielding their partners. Ethan didn't care. His eyes were locked on Sarah. He stumbled forward and dropped to his knees right in front of her as she stood holding a dessert plate. Ethan sobbed hysterically. His voice was hoarse, broken, pitiful. He begged for forgiveness. He claimed he had been deceived by Lily, that he still loved Sarah. He reached for the hem of Sarah's dress with his filthy hands, hoping the touch would awaken memories of their past. He humiliated himself completely, discarding all dignity, turning into a miserable spectacle for Sarah's elite business associates. Sarah stepped back, avoiding his touch. Her face showed no anger, only brief shock, then emotional emptiness. Before Ethan could grab her, a strong hand seized his shoulder. It was Daniel. The man stood firmly beside Sarah, his gaze sharp and authoritative. He didn't raise his voice, yet it echoed clearly through the silent garden. "Excuse me, sir. Who are you? Are you the new gardener who entered the wrong gate?" The question hit Ethan like a slap. Daniel, who clearly knew who Ethan was back at the corporate group, now pretended to not recognize him. To Daniel, Ethan wasn't Sarah's ex-husband. He wasn't anything. Just a stranger, or worse, a gardener. Ethan looked up, shifting his gaze between Daniel and Sarah, searching desperately for recognition. But Sarah's eyes were distant, as if she were looking at a lost madman, not the man she shared 5 years of her life with. That silence was suffocating, and for the first time, Ethan realized he had completely been erased from Sarah's life. While Ethan collapsed emotionally in front of Sarah's mansion gate, on the other side of the city, Lily was busy rebuilding her shattered life the fastest way she knew how. After fleeing with the remaining cash and valuables she stole from Ethan, Lily rented a room in a 5-star hotel for the night. She spent hours in front of the mirror, covering dark eyes with thick layers of powder, slipping into the sexiest evening dress she owned. Around her wrist sparkled a diamond-studded gold watch, one of the items she had secretly taken from Ethan's drawer. A luxury designer bag hung from her shoulder, worth tens of thousands of dollars, at least in her imagination. Tonight, Lily had one mission: find a new prey. She refused to return to a life of struggle. With her beauty, she was certain she could seduce a wealthier, more legitimate businessman than Ethan ever was. Her destination that night was an exclusive private lounge in downtown, a place frequented by business elites and socialites. She walked in with her chin high, projecting the aura of a high-class woman. In reality, the cash in her wallet was only enough for one drink. The lounge was dimly lit, filled with smooth jazz and the scent of expensive perfume. She sat at the bar, ordered a cocktail, and scanned the room like a hawk hunting prey. Her eyes landed on a group of middle-aged men lounging in a VIP area, laughing while smoking cigars. She made a sly smile. That was her target. She made her move, walking past the VIP table and deliberately dropping her handkerchief with an accidental gesture. One of the men, a mining tycoon, picked it up and called out to her. Introductions followed. Lily introduced herself as a model taking a break from the entertainment industry. The man was clearly interested, captivated by her beauty. Lily felt victory was close. She began imagining her luxurious life returning, European vacations, shopping without checking price tags. Ethan was nothing more than a failed stepping stone. Tonight, she would jump to a higher one. But her soaring confidence shattered instantly. The lounge doors opened. A group of VVIP guests entered, escorted by the venue manager. At the center of the group, Sarah. She looked breathtaking, dressed in a modern, fashionable, modest outfit, radiating effortless elegance. Daniel walked beside her, along with several foreign business partners. The entire room's attention shifted to Sarah. Even the man flirting with Lily stood up, eyes filled with respect, forgetting Lily completely. Lily's blood boiled. Jealousy and hatred consumed her. She couldn't accept being ignored. She couldn't accept seeing the woman she once mocked now becoming the center of the universe. Fueled by alcohol and false confidence, Lily stormed toward Sarah's group. She blocked their path, hands on her hips. The tension made the music feel like it stopped. Lily laughed mockingly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lily attacked Sarah verbally, calling her a fake saintly widow, accusing her of hypocrisy. Lily claimed Sarah's wealth came from extorting Ethan during the divorce. She tried to twist the truth publicly. She flaunted the designer bag on her shoulder and the diamond watch on her wrist, desperate to.
Lily shouted hysterically that Ethan loved her more, that he had showered her with luxury goods, while Sarah never received anything because she was boring. Sarah stopped walking. She looked at Lily calmly. Her expression was flat, completely unbothered. Daniel was about to step forward and have Lily thrown out, but Sarah stopped him with a subtle hand gesture. Sarah slowly scanned Lily from head to toe. Then her gaze settled on the handbag Lily was proudly displaying. The corner of Sarah's lips lifted into a thin, lethal smile. In a voice that wasn't loud but rang clearly through the tense silence, Sarah asked, "Lily, do you actually know how to tell the difference between authentic and fake luxury goods?" Lily froze, confused by the question. Before she could answer, Sarah continued. She said she genuinely felt sorry for Lily. Then she delivered the truth, one that shattered Lily's pride instantly. Sarah revealed that the handbag Lily was holding was a low-quality counterfeit, a fake, a knockoff purchased by Ethan on the black market for about $32, not tens of thousands of dollars as Lily believed. Sarah knew because Ethan had once asked her permission to buy that very bag. He claimed it was a gift for a client. In reality, it had been for Lily. She even pointed out specific stitching flaws, tiny defects that unmistakably marked it as fake. Lily's face burned red. Guests nearby began whispering, some snickering behind their glasses. The wealthy man who had been flirting with Lily earlier turned his face away in embarrassment, ashamed he had ever spoken to a woman flaunting fake goods. But Sarah wasn't finished. Then she pointed at the watch on Lily's wrist. This time, Sarah's tone became firm and serious.
"That watch," she said, "is real. It was a limited edition watch that belonged to Ethan, an heirloom gifted by his late father." Then came the final blow. Sarah calmly added that the watch was equipped with a GPS tracking system and had been officially reported stolen 2 days ago. Ethan himself filed the police report because it was the last valuable asset he owned, disappearing along with Lily. Lily staggered back a step, her face drained of color. Her confidence collapsed instantly. Suddenly, from the entrance of the lounge, 2 uniformed police officers walked in with firm strides, escorted by the venue's security staff. They approached Lily. One of the officers presented an arrest warrant based on a theft report filed by Ethan. Lily screamed, struggling wildly, claiming she was Ethan's girlfriend and had the right to the watch. The police didn't care. They handcuffed Lily in front of everyone. She broke down, crying hysterically, begging the rich man she had tried to seduce for help. He stepped back immediately, pretending not to know her. Lily was dragged out of the luxury lounge like a common criminal. Her dream of becoming a socialite queen shattered on the dance floor, watched by hundreds of eyes filled with disgust. Sarah merely exhaled softly. She turned away from the pathetic scene and resumed her conversation with her business partners, as if nothing more than trash had just been removed from her presence. Karma had arrived for Lily, not gently, but in the most humiliating and painful way possible, in the very place she had been most proud of. Back at Sarah's mansion garden, Ethan was still kneeling on the damp grass, surrounded by the guests' contemptuous stares. Daniel's words, "Are you the new gardener?" still echoed in his ears, slicing through the last remnants of his dignity. Ethan wanted to scream, to shout that he once was the master of this house, that he was Sarah's former husband. But his throat tightened. Looking at his filthy clothes and smelling his own sweat, he knew he didn't look any better than a homeless drifter. The security guards he had tricked earlier finally caught up. They grabbed Ethan roughly and dragged him to his feet. Ethan didn't resist. Hunger and shame had drained every ounce of strength from him. He was thrown back onto the cold, dark sidewalk outside the gate. The iron gate slammed shut in his face. A sharp electronic lock click followed, a sound that marked his past as permanently sealed. Inside, music resumed. Laughter burst out again, as if the disturbance called Ethan had never existed. Ethan slid down against the wall, hugged his knees, and cried silently. He felt the world was unfair. He felt Sarah was cruel. Hadn't she once loved him? Why would she let him starve like this? In his despair, Ethan's cunning mind reawakened. Pain turned into resentment. Resentment turned to revenge. He convinced himself he was entitled to Sarah's wealth. They had been married for 5 years. There had to be a legal loophole. He remembered an old acquaintance, a sleazy street lawyer, infamous for handling dirty cases without morals. With his last remaining strength, Ethan walked miles to the lawyer's shabby office in a run-down commercial strip on the city's outskirts. If he couldn't reclaim Sarah's heart, he would take her money by force through the legal system. He would sue for marital assets again, this time with a far more aggressive claim. The next day, wearing an ill-fitting borrowed suit from the lawyer, Ethan arrived at Sarah's office. This time, he wasn't alone. The shady lawyer stood beside him, carrying a briefcase stuffed with threatening documents. They demanded a mediation meeting. Ethan threatened to spread false stories to the media, claiming Sarah was a heartless wife who abandoned her husband if she refused to meet. Ethan believed the threat worked. Sarah's secretary escorted them into a cold, small meeting room. The door opened. Sarah entered, alone, no Daniel. Her face was calm, no fear, no pressure. She sat across from Ethan and his lawyer and placed a thick brown envelope on the table. Ethan's eyes lit up. His heart pounded. He imagined a hush money check, maybe worth hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions. A victorious smile crept on his lips. He nudged his lawyer, signaling success. Women are weak against social threats, he thought. Sarah slid the envelope toward him. In a flat voice, she said, "You want wealth, don't you? You believe you're entitled to what we had during our marriage. Take it. This is the part you left behind." With trembling hands, Ethan grabbed the envelope and tore it open eagerly. But instead of a check, he found bills, stacks of them. He read them one by one, eyes widening in horror. Illegal online loans, hidden credit card balances, debts at luxury boutiques, even pawn documents for his parents' land certificate, secretly mortgaged, all under Ethan's name. The total? Approximately $130,000. Ethan looked at Sarah in panic. "This isn't mine," he shouted. Sarah's eyes hardened. "Everything is under your name, Ethan. Lily used your ID, your signature, and your personal data to take out those loans over the past year. She bought bags, clothes, cosmetic treatments, everything using your INEA. And since we're divorced with a clear separation of assets agreement, personal debt belongs to the individual." She leaned closer. "These are your debts, not mine." The room spun. Ethan remembered Lily frequently borrowing his wallet and phone for small things. She had been piling debt everywhere using his name. Most transactions dated back to when he was still legally married to Sarah, when he was busy cheating and neglecting his wife. Sarah stood up. "One more thing," she added calmly. "The illegal lenders, they already have your latest street address. They're not as patient as I am. They're looking for you now. I gave them your data so they'd stop bothering me." Ethan froze. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He came expecting money and received a financial death sentence. Debt, no assets, no job, no home. The lawyer glanced at the bills, packed his bag immediately, and fled, refusing to be involved in something so dangerous. Ethan was left alone again. He stared blankly at the stack of papers. Images of Lily's sly smile and Sarah's cold calm alternated in his mind. He was finished. Not only bankrupt, his life was now in danger from violent debt collectors. Ethan collapsed into the chair. Tears soaked the bills, the final inheritance of his affair. He realized he had dug his own grave, and now the soil was being shoveled over him, alive. It was not debt collectors who found him, but the police. Apparently, the embezzlement case reported by the management of Safina Holdings had officially entered the investigation stage. On top of that, several former clients had also filed reports, claiming they had been defrauded by Ethan during his time at the company. Ethan did not resist as the officers snapped handcuffs around his wrists and escorted him into a patrol car, watched closely by neighbors who stared at him with suspicion. Deep inside, Ethan felt a strange sense of relief. At least inside a police station, he would be safe from violent loan sharks. What he did not realize was that his real hell was only just beginning. Life in prison turned out to be far worse than Ethan's darkest imagination. He was placed in an overcrowded cell where the stench of sweat, urine, and damp concrete assaulted his senses, noses that were once accustomed to expensive cologne. Inside that cell, Ethan encountered criminals of every kind. His bad luck continued when he recognized one of the inmates, a former market thug whose car Ethan had once spat on for blocking the road when Ethan was in a hurry. The thug grinned cruelly upon seeing him.
That night became the longest night of Ethan's life. He was bullied relentlessly, forced to massage the feet of senior inmates. His food rations were stolen, and he had to sleep curled up beside a filthy toilet hole. A week later, a prison guard called out Ethan's name. Someone was there to see him. Hope surged through Ethan's chest. He thought it might be his mother, or perhaps Sarah had changed her mind and withdrawn the charges out of pity. With limping steps and a bruised face, Ethan walked toward the visitation room, separated by thick glass. When he saw the figure sitting on the other side, his heart skipped. It was Sarah. She sat calmly, her face clean and radiant, sharply contrasting with Ethan's dirty, gaunt appearance. Ethan hurriedly grabbed the phone connecting them. His voice cracked as he begged her. He pleaded with Sarah to free him. He promised he would do anything, even serve her for the rest of his life, if only he could escape this nightmare. Sarah showed no emotion. She neither cried nor expressed anger. Instead, she slid a document through the narrow slot beneath the glass. Ethan stared at it in confusion. It was not a withdrawal of charges, it was a property rights relinquishment agreement. In a flat voice, Sarah explained that Ethan's parents' house in Near Field District had nearly been seized by the bank the day before. Unbeknownst to his parents, Ethan had secretly mortgaged their home a year earlier to fund his lavish lifestyle with Lily. The loan had now matured. His elderly parents were almost evicted, on the verge of becoming homeless in their old age. Ethan stood frozen. He had committed so many sins that he had forgotten this one entirely. Sarah continued, explaining that she had paid off the entire debt and redeemed the property title. For a moment, Ethan felt a flicker of relief, hoping this meant Sarah still cared. That hope was crushed instantly. Sarah made it clear that she did this not for Ethan, but out of respect for his elderly parents, who had always been kind to Sarah. She told Ethan to sign the document immediately. The document stated that Ethan permanently relinquished his inheritance rights to the house and transferred full ownership directly to his mother, ensuring that he could never sell or mortgage it again for gambling or women. Ethan's hands trembled as he held the pen. He finally realized how despicable he had become. He had nearly taken away the last shelter his parents had. With tears streaming down his face, Ethan signed the document. When he finished, he pressed his palm against the glass and looked at Sarah with pleading eyes, asking if there was still a second chance for him. Sarah stood up, adjusted her bag, and looked at Ethan one last time. She answered calmly that Ethan's chances had ended the moment he chose betrayal. Then she turned away and walked out, leaving Ethan pounding helplessly against the glass, realizing that her savior was gone forever. A year passed quickly. Life continued to turn its wheel, crushing the arrogant and lifting the patient. In a grand event hall, a wedding ceremony was taking place, solemn and magnificent. Soft, elegant colors filled the room. Fresh flowers decorated every corner, releasing a calming fragrance. On the stage, Sarah sat beside Daniel, her new husband, a business legal consultant. They looked perfectly matched, like royalty for the day. Sarah smiled genuinely, freely. It was nothing like the forced, cautious smiles she used to wear when she was with Ethan. Daniel gazed at his wife with love and respect. They had just exchanged sacred vows, determined to build a marriage based on faith, integrity, and mutual respect. Sarah was not only a successful entrepreneur, but also the founder of a social foundation that helps women who are victims of financial deception in marriage. She had turned her pain into strength to help others. The guests offered their blessings, admiring her resilience and success. The dark shadows of the past were gone. Sarah had truly closed her old chapter and begun a beautiful new one. Meanwhile, in a grimy corner of the city, Ethan lived a very different fate. He had just been granted parole due to good behavior and prison overcrowding, but his status as a former inmate convicted of embezzlement made it impossible for him to find a decent job. His college degree was worthless. His friends had long abandoned him. Now, Ethan worked as a dishwasher in a small, hot, and crowded restaurant. The hands that once held luxury pens were now rough, cracked, and blistered from hours submerged in harsh, soapy water. That afternoon, the restaurant was packed. Ethan struggled to keep up with the endless pile of dirty dishes in the steamy back kitchen. The smell of leftover food made him nauseous, but he had no choice. Suddenly, the restaurant manager shouted at him, ordering him to bring clean plates to the dining area because the servers were overwhelmed. With aching shoulders and heavy steps, Ethan lifted a crate of clean plates and walked out of the suffocating kitchen into the noisy dining hall. As he arranged the plates on a shelf, his gaze fell on a table near the window. The plates nearly slipped from his hands. There sat a married couple enjoying lunch together. It was Sarah and Daniel. They had stopped by after inspecting the location for a new business branch. Ethan froze. He saw Sarah laughing brightly at something Daniel said. Daniel gently wiped the corner of her lips with a napkin, a small gesture that spoke volumes about his love. He had never seen Sarah this happy. When she was with Ethan, she had mostly stayed silent, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Ethan wanted to call out, to scream that he was there, but his voice caught in his throat. He saw his reflection in the wall mirror, a thin, filthy man wearing a stained plastic apron that smelled of grease. He was nothing compared to Daniel, confident, clean, and dignified. Shame crashed into Ethan's chest. He realized he wasn't even worthy to greet Sarah. He turned away quickly, trying to hide his face, afraid she would see him like this. Before he could return to the kitchen, the manager stormed over and yelled at him loudly for dreaming and working too slowly. The harsh shouting drew the attention of several customers, including Sarah. She glanced briefly toward the kitchen entrance. Her eyes met the sight of Ethan's hunched back as he was being scolded. Sarah paused for a moment, as if she recognized something. Then she gently shook her head, smiled at Daniel, and continued her meal calmly. For Sarah, the past was over. There was no hatred left, only indifference. Ethan was nothing more than a stranger who had once passed through her life. Back in the cramped kitchen, Ethan faced the mountain of dirty dishes again. The manager threatened to cut his wage if he didn't work faster. "If you slow down again, I'll cut your wages to $5 for the day," the manager snapped. The number echoed in Ethan's ears, reminding him of the $5,000 he once mocked and threw away in court. Back then, he thought $5,000 was nothing. Now he had to work himself to exhaustion, endure insults just to earn a pitiful wage. Tears fell silently into the sink filled with soap bubbles. His chest burned with regret that came far too late. He scrubbed the plates with the last of his strength, accepting that this was his place now. He had thrown away a diamond for trash, and now he would live forever among that trash. Outside, the sun shone brightly for Sarah. Inside this dark kitchen, Ethan would continue washing the stains of his past, stains that would never truly disappear.